Have you ever found yourself saying things, maybe in a chat or on social media, that you absolutely never say face to face?
Mm.
Or maybe you've seen someone online who just seems like a totally different person than they are in real life. Well, today we're doing a deep dive into the psychology behind that. It's called the digital disinhibition effect. And this isn't just about, definitions. We're really digging into the sources you sent us to unpack the mechanisms that shift our behavior online.
Mm.
It's a concept that psychologist John Suhler really articulated back in 2004. So our mission today is to figure out why the internet can feel, well, freer, maybe empowering sometimes, but also, frankly, why it can get pretty toxic too.
And that understanding is, well, it's more critical than ever, isn't it? Just given how much of our lives are lived through these digital channels now. What's really striking is how people often just drop the usual social restraints, the kind of things that guide us in real world settings. And that leads to this whole range of behaviors from, surprising openness all the way to outright hostility. It's a huge shift.
Right. And when we talk about this disinhibition, it's not just one thing, is it? So Solar actually breaks it down. We often focus on the negatives, the bad stuff. But he also pointed out a really powerful positive side to it. Could you maybe walk us through that duality?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's crucial to see the whole spectrum here. On one end, you've got what Suhler called benign disinhibition. So that's the positive side. It's where the reduced social pressure lets people share personal feelings or maybe express vulnerabilities they'd normally hide or even explore parts of their identity more openly than they would offline. Like think of someone finding an online support group, maybe for a rare condition or something. They might share really intimate details they'd never say in person, right? And they find this amazing connection. That's benign disinhibition, actually. Building empathy, building community.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. But then on the flip side, there's the one that seems to grab all the headlines, toxic disinhibition.
Right, exactly. And this is where that lack of restraint shows up as hostile language, nasty comments, harassment, cyberbullying, or people pushing really extreme opinions they'd probably tone down or just avoid completely offline.
It's the darker side, yeah. Where that freedom sort of becomes a license for aggression, it fuels a lot of the negativity and, honestly, the polarization we see everywhere online.
Yeah.
It's strange, isn't it? The same basic mechanisms that allow for that vulnerable sharing can also, if they're unchecked, pave the way for really destructive behavior.
So Suhler didn't just slap labels on these two sides. He really dug into why this happens. He identified, what, 6 core factors?
That's right, 6 key elements.
Okay, so if we peel back the layers here, how do these individual factors actually cause this broad disinhibition? Let me start with the first two, because they seem really connected. Dissociative anonymity, the idea that you don't know me, and invisibility, or you can't see me. Yeah, those two are absolutely foundational. When your real name, your real identity is hidden, and you don't have that face-to-face interaction, well, there's an immediate drop in accountability, right? It's kind of like putting on an invisible cloak, like you said. You're not seeing the immediate reaction on someone's face, the frown, the hurt look, the body language. And that absence of direct nonverbal feedback, it just strips away a lot of those subtle social pressures that usually keep our behavior, in check. It can make you feel safer, sure, but it also creates this detachment from the real impact of your words, the consequences.
That makes total sense. Yeah, the immediate social friction just isn't there. Okay, what about the element of time, asynchronicity?
Yeah.
Sila called it, I can post and walk away. Now, we often think of that as, well, giving us time to think before we reply, which sounds good. But what's the catch?
It is a double-edged sword, exactly. The lack of real-time back and forth means you can take your time, craft a really thoughtful response. That can be great. But it also means you don't face immediate pushback or reaction. You can fire off some really heated email or comment and then just log off. You leave the other person to deal with the fallout. This kind of time lag, this temporal disconnect, it can make it easier to say more extreme things because that pressure of an immediate live response just isn't there. It's why a really inflammatory tweet might have had hours of thought behind it, completely detached from any real-time human feedback loop.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this next one sounds a bit philosophical. Solipsistic introjection, the idea that I hear your voice in my head. What does Solar actually mean by that, this internal dialogue?
Yeah, it sounds a bit out there, but it's a really crucial, subtle point. Without actually seeing or hearing the other person, our brains just naturally fill in the gaps. It's what we do. We project our own stuff, our biases, our expectations, maybe even our own mood or anxieties onto that faceless text on the screen. So you might read a completely neutral comment, maybe in a forum, right? But if you're already feeling defensive, you could read it with this hostile, sneering tone that you've completely imagined.
Ah, okay. So you're basically having a conversation with a version of the person you created in your own head.
Pretty much. And that can lead to massive distortions, right? Escalating misunderstandings, fueling conflicts that just wouldn't happen or would be quickly resolved in an actual face-to-face chat where tone and intent are so much clearer.
Wow, okay. That internal monologue really packs a punch then. Right, and finally, there are two more that seem kind of linked. Dissociative imagination, like this isn't the real world, and minimization of authority. We're all kind of equal here. How do those two ideas work together to create this sense of, well, almost unchecked freedom online, sometimes for the worse?
Well, when we go online, there's often this maybe subconscious tendency to see these digital spaces as somehow separate from our real lives. It can feel a bit like a game, maybe, or a fantasy world, a place where the normal rules of polite society maybe don't quite apply or don't feel as binding. And this dissociative imagination gets amplified by the minimization of authority. Think about it. In the physical world, you have clear authority figures, explicit or implicit. Parents, teachers, bosses, law enforcement, or even just the social norms enforced by, say, being in a crowded public place. Online, those traditional gatekeepers, they're often just absent or their influence feels much weaker.
Right, there's no principal watching over the online playground.
Exactly. And without that guiding presence or the perceived risk of real-world consequences, people just feel much, much freer to speak or act in ways they definitely wouldn't in a setting where authority or social fallout feels more immediate and real. It's a huge factor in why online discourse can break down so easily.
Okay, so when you pull all these threads together, dissociative anonymity, invisibility, asynchronicity, solipsistic introjection, dissociative imagination, and minimization of authority.
Mhm.
The combined effect, this digital disinhibition effect, it really has profound implications, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Shaping everything from how we express ourselves personally to how public conversations unfold. We've talked about the two key forms,
Hmm.
that benign disinhibition, which can be amazing for vulnerability, for
Yeah.
community,
Mhm.
and then the toxic disinhibition, the stuff that leads to hostility, cyberbullying, maybe spreading misinformation. And it all comes down to those 6 underlying factors Suler laid out. It's this powerful duality, isn't it? On one hand, it can empower shy voices, help marginalized groups connect.
Absolutely. Crucial connections can be formed.
But on the other hand, it seriously increases the risks of harassment, online pile-ons, and just general polarization.
Exactly right. And think about a concrete example, like maybe a really reserved student in a big university lecture. In the physical classroom, right? They might never make eye contact, rarely raise their hand, just keeps quiet. But then you go to the online discussion forum for that exact same course. Maybe it's anonymous or pseudonymous. And suddenly, the student completely transforms. They're posting these long, detailed, really opinionated arguments. They're sharing personal experiences related to the topic, maybe even challenging their classmates pretty directly.
Same person, totally different behavior.
Totally different. And why? Because their name and face aren't attached, maybe? They have time to craft their points perfectly because of asynchronicity. And that intense pressure of immediate social judgment, it's just lifted. It's the environment fundamentally changing the behavior.
Yeah. And it's not just an interesting theory, is it? Your sources really pointed towards practical ways to deal with this. Things like well thought out moderation policies on platforms or digital etiquette training, maybe even clever ways to manage anonymity controls. It seems the goal isn't to just kill online freedom, but to understand these psychological levers, right? To actually design digital spaces that maybe encourage the good stuff, the benign side, while putting some checks on the toxic impulses.
Precisely. It's about mindful design based on understanding these effects, which I think really brings us to a pretty important question for everyone listening and for us too. Given the, well, the subtle but incredibly powerful force of these invisible factors online, how can we, both as individuals navigating these spaces and maybe as communities building them, how can we intentionally cultivate online environments that really maximize that benign disinhibition, the openness, the connection, the empathy, while actively working to counter the toxic impulses, not just spotting it in others, but importantly, recognizing and managing it within ourselves as we live more and more of our lives online?